everybody. How are you doing today? I hope everybody had a great weekend. I am going to be painting some lavender today, but let me know how your weekend went. Did you guys have a good weekend? We went down to Cowtown, aka Fort Worth, to the stockyards. We hadn't been down there in a while because of COVID mainly. And I don't know, those of you that are around this area, if you haven't been in the area lately at the stockyards, they have done so much. They've added all kinds of restaurants. They put a canal back behind this little row of restaurants. Always a lot of activity going on. When we were there, they had a band, and they've got an art gallery that I actually used to be in. I pulled my stuff because it's really mainly Western paintings, which is not really my style. But we just had a great time, suffered a little bit of heat, which, hey, I can't complain too much about because our Texas weather has actually been a pretty mild summer so far, other than last week where we had 5 days of 100 degrees. But Sunday night, a storm came in, so it went from about 97 to 75, and I was loving it. So these couple of days, yesterday and today, have been pretty mild. Yesterday was in the upper 80s, and today's, I think, in the low 90s, so I'll take it. But so anyway, let's get to the painting. So I am painting a lavender farm that we went to back in 2018 when I taught an artist retreat. And it's just this little couple that they man their own farm. They take care of everything. They make lots of oils from their lavender. They made us lavender cookies while we were there, which I made for my workshops on occasion. So if you ever want to taste those, that would be a great place to do it. So let's go ahead and get started on this. And by the way, I forgot to introduce myself. So those of you that don't know me, I'm Chris Branley, and we're gonna jump right in. I paint in the alla prima method. Let me just flip this around here. So alla prima basically is painting wet into wet. And I've already got my first wet layer on. I'm working in oils. Hi, Kathy. Glad to have you here. Yeah, guys, be sure and jump in. Tell me hello. I love to hear from you. Love to connect. Tell me if you're an artist or an art lover or both. What do you paint in, or what is your medium that you work in? All right, so I've already laid in some transparent paints here. Just kind of a quick sketch just to get the basics down, and then I like to build color on top of that. So we are going to jump in, I think, with the sky, and I'm actually going to go with kind of a big brush to do that. So this is a 28 bright, and I'm going to mix up some color here. Hi, Jessica. I'm so glad you're here, and I appreciate the support. So glad you like the live demos. I have fun doing them. It's nice to connect, like I said, with other artists and just people who enjoy kind of seeing what the process is all about. All right, so we're gonna start just kind of laying in a little bit of color, and I always like to kind of start off without a lot of commitment until I can get the color that I'm going for, and I'm thinking this is probably gonna be fine for now. And if this is your first time watching, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Let me know where you're from. So I'm just using kind of a light touch here. not wanting to cover everything all at once. Kind of taking the opportunity to carve around this little hill and some of the treetop there. And we may go in and put some brighter colors in, but I'm gonna hold off on that. It's gonna kind of move around the board here a little bit. And my little Tibby, she's scratching on the door, so let me let her in real quick. My little Yorkie too. She's actually was hanging out outside. That's what a difference the weather has been today. Usually she does not want to be out in the heat, and who can blame her? Let me let her out of the room here. But we are definitely enjoying the cool front that we're having. I know that sounds crazy in the 90s, but when it's 100 degrees and humid, or you know, lower 90s feels pretty cool. So if you're just joining in, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you guys being here. And just introduce yourself. Tell me where you're from. All right, I'm still using the larger brush. I'm wanting to kind of get bigger generalized shapes to start off with. And I'm gonna kind of just work my way down. I think we'll come in and start putting in some of this roof line. And you've probably noticed, so I don't know if you saw my event advertisement for the live video, and I posted the picture I was going to be using, but I've actually come in and cropped it and saturated the colors just a little bit. And then also I'm considering leaving off this brick here. I don't typically use a lot of red in my paintings, and I think I'm gonna leave that off. I've actually done a different angle of this same painting and I actually put it in, but I think I'm gonna leave it off this time. So we'll see what happens. All right, so I am going to work the roof line here, like I said. Gonna mix up a gray tone. And I'm gonna start with that. I'm gonna keep it kind of neutral, and then if I'm gonna pop color in on that neutral, that will really help it to stand out. So, good idea to have some neutrals in your painting. Even if you want it vibrant and colorful, sometimes that just actually helps really pop that out. So I'm just gonna kind of skip around here and not cover all of that purple underneath. Just kind of tickling the surface and using the corner of my brush. And then I'm gonna swing over here, and even though the majority of this one is a terracotta, I still wanna have some of that neutral to balance that out. So again, I don't wanna cover up all of this pretty color underneath, but just gonna kind of skip around, scribble some of that in, and we'll build on that. All right, I am gonna go ahead and move to a little bit smaller brush now. So I'm still gonna be using a bright, but now I'm coming in with a 20. And this is a Royal Sabletech Bright by Royal and Longnickel. And I kind of think I wanna jump down in through here a little bit. So I'm gonna start with some of the greenery, first of all. And there's some pretty bright greens down in there, but I'm gonna go in with kind of a neutral first and a mid-tone, and then we'll build those highlights towards the end. If y'all have any questions, feel free to jump in anytime. I see a lot of my students are here, so glad to see you guys. So again, not committing, not covering everything. Kind of skipping around. Letting some of those colors blend into each other a little bit. I don't want to get too carried away with the greens yet, because when I start putting in some of those lavender tones, they're going to have opaque like whites in it, and I don't want the white to mix in with these greens because they'll start to get chalky. So just going to kind of skip around a little bit and just be mindful about that, because I can always come back and add greens later. Kathy is asking what green I'm using. So I've mixed up a neutral, like a sap and cad yellow deep, and then toned it down with a red. And that helps to neutralize it so it's not quite so in your face green. Just I put some of these purples in to indicate these darker shadows, and they're a really great support for placing these greens on top because they're nice and dark. Hey Donnie, I just saw your comment. Good afternoon. Good to see you on here. And Donnie is going with us to Italy in October, he and his wife. So just around the corner, so I've been doing lots of planning with that and just kind of making sure we got all of the regulations for flying down and what we got to do. So it's going to be a little bit more complicated than it normally would, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. So just a matter of getting your COVID tests, and you have to get signed up for, I can't remember what it's called. I'm going to have to look it up, but you have to register online and make sure they know where your hotel is, where you're staying, all of that. All right, I'm going to take this green and kind of start placing some of these bushes back in here, start building those up. All right. There are kind of some shadowy little greens back in here, so I'm just gonna, I've kind of placed those already with some of these purples. So I'm just warming those up with these greens a little bit, and we'll pop in lots of bright highlights. And all those highlights usually come in towards the end, and that's what really starts to make the painting. All right, let's see here. I am going to go ahead and move into this lavender. The most exciting part of the painting, I think. Okay, let's see here. So when I paint lavender, I use lots of different colors of purple. Because if I just go in with one color tone, it just doesn't have the oomph. So I just kind of come in and mix up some different values, different colors, warm purples and cool purples. And just kind of start skipping in around and making sure I don't cover up all of that pretty blue underneath. It really is a nice support. And I'm also wanting to be mindful about the shapes of these lavender rows. So they're concave, and so I'm keeping that in mind. So when I come in with the greenery and stuff, I'm wanting to make sure that we have this edge that we don't lose. And then we've got a nice top that is going to get highlighted. And we've got cooler tones going on back in here in the shadows. So I'm kind of paying attention to that. Just skipping around here and there. And once I get the majority of this color in, we'll kind of move around and start popping in some of the other lavender colors. Or maybe we'll come in with the greenery. All right, I think what I'm gonna do, we're gonna hold off on putting in more lavender because I really kind of want to build that up slowly. And the reason I don't do everything at once in one little area is because if I spend a whole lot of time in one section, then my color, temperature, and values may not match up with what's going on in the rest of the painting. So if I can kind of pull all of these colors up together, it just makes it that much easier. So I'm going to come back here, this little path back here, and we're just going to indicate just a little hint. I don't want to draw too much attention back there. And I'm kind of wanting to get a kind of a lighter neutral tone, neutral gray, but warm, kind of leaning towards the warmer side of the gray. And I'm going to put this in. I'm not sure, I don't want to go too light. So I'm just going to come in and kind of test it. That's kind of light. I'm going to cool it down a little bit. Pulling in some purple, kind of pinkish tone, maybe a little blue. Yeah, and I don't know how much of a difference you can see on the camera, but it is cooler and not quite as yellowy warm, so I'm liking that better. And it's just peeking through some of these little tree branches, so I'm just gonna pop little strokes in back there and not commit completely at this point. Oh, Donnie says the focus is off. Okay. Let's see. Is everybody else seeing it out of focus? Because for me, it could be my eyes, but it doesn't look out of focus. Maybe if let's see here. Not sure what I can do about that, Donnie. Let's see, Becky says it looks okay to me. Yeah, I don't know. It looks in focus to me, Donnie. I'm so sorry. And Becky, I got your painting here. It's just about dry. I was gonna get it mailed the other day, but it was still a little bit wet. So you should be receiving that soon. All right, again, we're just kind of trying to create little indications of that path, and I'm going to bring that over to the front here too. Now in the photograph, this is a hill, and it's actually pretty steep going down into where their front lawn is. but I don't necessarily feel like that's something I need to focus on, so I'm not really gonna worry about trying to create that. I'm just gonna place this little, and I don't even think that's actually part of the sidewalk, but I'm gonna make it part of the sidewalk. That's gonna be their little front stoop. Because as artists, we can do what we want, right? We can take artistic license and we can make it however we want, which is fun. All right, let's jump in here on the building. So I want that to be a nice warm stucco. So Jan says okay for me. Okay, good. I'm glad everybody else is seeing it in focus. Donnie, I don't know, maybe if you turn it off and turn it back on, that always seems to be a solution for anything, but who knows? All right, let's see here. Coming in with kind of a light stone color, and with my stone colors, I love to change up the temperatures and put in pink tones and bluer tones and more yellowy stucco tones. So I'm going to start off going a little darker, and then we'll pop in highlights again, like I said, towards the end. I'm going to start with this. So this is kind of a neutral, warmer stucco color, and I don't want to color all of the building, all of that undertone. And I'm going to skip around because the light likes to play around with this stucco. There's lots of dips and highs and lows, and so that's where all that temperature shift comes in. Yeah, Donnie says, must be my internet looked good in the beginning. Maybe so. If you're out in the country, could be. All right, now I'm gonna take that same color because I want to balance out the painting. So before I go and start changing those temperatures up, I kind of want to pull that throughout my painting, get everything balanced. Just popping in these little peak holes in between these little branches and leaves. And then I want this side to be lighter. The light is actually coming this direction. We're seeing longer shadows over here. So I'm gonna pop in some lighter values, lighter stucco tones, and warmer. So I'm gonna go more orangey or yellowy. So let's just see what this looks like. I think that works. So just getting little highlights. All right, and I feel like we need to do something with this hill back here. So I want to keep it, it's kind of dark back in here, but I want these trees to be darker than what I'm seeing back here, because I don't want everything to be all the same green tone. So I am going to imagine that the sun, so since it's coming in this way, it's just really hitting on this area back here. So I'm going to keep it fairly light, but we're going to tone it down. So I'm going to gray it out just a little bit. Okay, so this is a fairly neutral gray tone. I'm just going to come in and see what that looks like. So this may or may not be the color I'm gonna stick with, but I'm gonna start with this. I can always build other color tones on top. So I'm just moving around, making sure I don't cover up any of this tree that's in front. So at this point, it looks like that's gonna work. So once we get some of the other colors on there, we will check it again. It's always good to just keep going back and forth and just checking those color tones and those temperatures and just taking a step backwards and taking little breaks and making sure that it's gonna work. Oh, good. So Donnie says, good call, Chris, I can see again. Yay, okay, so you must have turned it on and off again. I don't know, that always seems to be the solution for everything, so. That's what Tyler, my husband, always tells me to do if something's not working. So glad that paid off. So I'm just coming in and pulling the sky and the hill together because I want to soften that edge back there. I don't want it to be a really sharp edge or a sharp contrast. And I just hit the phone, so camera, sorry about that, guys. All right. I think we're ready to come in and start popping up some of these highlights in the front. So I want to make sure I get that grayish green color out of the brush. I'm really rinsing it out, and then I take my paper towel and really pull that excess color out of there so it's nice and clean and nice and dry. Don't want to contaminate my colors. All right, so back to the purples. Gonna go a little warmer and a little lighter. So this color is a little more intense as well. And I have to be careful because I'm right up next to these greens. So if I pick the green up and keep working, it's just gonna muddy up all those colors. So I gotta make sure I'm keeping that brush really clean in between these strokes. And it's a good idea not to put a color everywhere. Just because you put a color on there and you think, oh, that's a great color, that's gonna work really well, you just don't wanna overwork it. So it's always better to stop sooner than you think you need to. You can always come back and place more in. So I'm kind of keeping these warmer tones more towards this end of these rows because a lot of this back in here is in shadow. Thinking about my brush strokes, making sure I don't do the same little stroke every time. And now I think we're going to cool these down over here. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on those cooler purples. We're going to gray those down a little bit. Okay, so this is actually fairly light. I might want to, let me just try this out. I might want to put in some of the darker tone first, but while I've got this, I'm just going to go with it. And then we'll work our way backward and get darker. It also helps to create depth in the painting if you can change those values and temperatures. And I'm bringing the lighter colors up in, so that's bringing your eye into the painting. I think it's always nice to have some shadows towards the bottom of your painting down here, and then put in some highlights to bring that eye into that composition. All right, going in with some cooler tones, cooler and darker, mixing up blues and violets. Liking that color. Let's see, this is still pretty light on top here, so we're not going to do a whole lot with that. But over on this side is darker, so we're going to pop in some of that darker purple down on the side. And I'm still going to come in with more greens through here. But it's just fun to play those greens and purples off of each other, so it's just not all one boring color through there. Let's see, a little bit of darker value in here. Probably get a lot of that with the green. Carry some of that back in towards these back rows. All right, I think it's time to put some of those green little sprigs in there. So I'm going to mix up a mid-tone, but I'm going a little bit lighter than what I did earlier. Still wanting to neutralize it. So anytime I mix up a green and I'm putting greenery in nature, if you're just mixing your greens and your yellows or greens and oranges, it's going to be really stark and kind of an electric green that's not real natural. So I save those for highlights, and then always make sure I'm adding a little bit of red tone into that green, which is the complementary color, and that just helps to tone it down so it's not so in your face. Looks a little more natural. And that was too dark, so I'm going lighter. I think this does need a little more green, a little less red. This side is clearly lighter than right up next to that lavender, so I'm paying attention to that. And I'm still going to pop some highlights even lighter than these greens that I'm already placing. We're still going to pop in much lighter greens towards the end. Just kind of carry these back. Trying to do this without covering up everything that's already laid in, all that undertone. Just little hints back in here. And I'm going to play that now off of a cooler green. So we've got that really warm green, and now we're going to bounce that off of mixing up a cooler green. So I'm kind of working at keeping the value the same, but I'm just changing the temperature and going cooler. So if you have like a phthalo green or viridian green, that works really well. Let's see. It also kind of helps to break up those purples. And we've got greenery going on in here, so I'm just going to kind of real quickly kind of lay in hints of greens. And I'll pull some warmer colors back in there as well. Okay, so I'm just kind of stopping for a minute. I'm looking, kind of taking an assessment to see where I need to go next. And we still need to build these trees up. So I think we'll do that. And I want to make sure I've got really darks before I start placing lighter greens in there. So I'm just going to punch those up a little bit darker. And then we can build some of those lighter greens on top of that. Just skipping around a little bit, creating those deep pockets of shadow. All right, now I want these to be more of a bluer green than the lawn in here. I'm just gonna pull some of that together. All right, so mixing up a cooler green, using more blue in my green now. Okay, so we're gonna start a little bit dark and then we'll build light colors on top. So I just wanna cover up some of these darker edges, kind of break those up a little bit. Without taking away those lighter little pockets. Okay, we're gonna lighten that up now. Still keeping it a cooler green. And it's more neutral. If I need to come back in and warm it up a little bit, I can do that. But again, playing those temperatures, warms and cools against each other just is really helpful. Just coming in with a little bit lighter value. Yeah, so it's definitely gonna need some warmth back in there, but this is a good start. Just want to bring those colors around the painting. And I'm going to bump up that warmth. Kind of carrying those colors into the sky, letting some of those leaves be separate and airy. Kind of thinking about how the light is coming this way, so it's hitting on bunches of branches. So I'm not doing individual leaves, just laying in little shelves where that light is hitting. I think I can pop that up even warmer, even lighter in some areas. Add a little yellow in there. Now, as it comes over here, I'm seeing cooler highlights. So I don't want to carry these warm yellow greens over onto this side necessarily. So I'm going back to my cooler green highlight. This one's further back, so I'm not going to put as much warmth back in there like we did on these closer trees. Don't want to bring as much attention to these. All right, so as I look at it, I think what I want to do is kind of mimic this color up on the chimney. And I'm out of that color, of course, so I've got to mix that up again if I can remember what I used here. I think I can get it close enough. Probably would have been a good idea to pop that color up there when I was working this one, but it's okay. Doesn't have to be the exact same color. And I'm not going to do, there's lots of detailing back in there, but I don't really need to bring a lot of attention to that. So I'm not going to worry about putting detail there. We're just doing hints and impressions, and the eye is going to read that as a chimney, so it's got nice contrast with the roofing right now. So now that we're working with this color, I want to kind of mix up some different temperatures and values in that stucco. So I'm going to mix up kind of a cooler blue-gray. Let's see, I need to lighten that. I think it's going to be too dark. Okay, so let's check this color out first. We're just gonna pop a little bit. Yeah, I think that's gonna be nice. just hints here and there. And kind of start building around the frame and carving those shapes out a little bit better. And there's shadowing going on this part of the stucco here. So I'm gonna get darker and cooler back in there, or I may even just leave some of that purple and just start to blend those edges a little bit. But for now, I'm just gonna lay it and leave it, putting in those brush strokes, moving on to my next color. So I'm gonna mix up another stucco color, but it's gonna have more pink tone. Just kind of let those colors play off of each other and create that bouncing light. Gosh, I should be putting these colors over here too on this building. Let's see. Hey, Abigail. She is asking, how did I lighten the blue-gray? Did I use white? So actually, I have not been using white. I've been using a color called Ice Blue, which is really light, but it's kind of a grayish blue tone. Okay, so now I'm going really light. So now I am using white, and I'm mixing up kind of a light, warm, neutral that's much lighter than what I've got, because I want to pop that in right in here on the inside of that ledge, and I'm going to do the same thing here. So it's just when you're layering colors, you just kind of have to go back and forth, and I feel like I took a lot of that original color out or covered up maybe too much of it. So I'm just coming back in and layering some more. So you're just building those layers, and I'm not blending or pushing the color into each other. I'm just kind of laying them on top and letting them sit. So I'm just coming back in with that roof line again. And I think I'm just going to come in with kind of a cool blue tone in here where these shadows are. And again, I don't want to cover everything because that's got a really pretty purpley color tone underneath. But that's just going to make some nice shadow color, I think. And it's mimicking what's going on with the lavender, so I like that. All right, we need to pop in some really bright highlights. And we've got 10 minutes, perfect. Okay, so time for the fun pops of color and highlights. I like to save those to the end if you can be patient enough to do that, which sometimes it's difficult. This is what really starts to kind of help make the painting. And back in here, I don't want this too bright, so I've got a really bright green right now. I don't know if you can see this on my brush. So I'm gonna pull some of that ice blue in that I was talking about earlier, and that'll help tone it down slightly. And I'm just gonna think about these lights in between these shadows. I wanna try to keep my directions going the same. That one kind of went off in a direction I didn't really want it to go. Just kind of coming in between some of these shadows I already laid in. It's important to squint and kind of look and see on here what you can diminish as far as your detailing, and it helps to pop those values out as well. Coming in with a little bit cooler temperature over here. Still bright, but cooler. And I'm gonna have hints of that coming into in between these rows, just to pull the eye back. And if you're hearing funny noises, that's gonna be Tibby. She's coming into the room now. This is where she comes in and out to go outside, so. But sometimes she's indecisive, like right now. All right, let's see here. Let's pull that in. And the other thing I want to do before we sign off, there's still some little detailing I'm probably going to come in and refine. I always like to come back and kind of soften some of my edges, like back here. Some of these edges might be a little harsh. So I'll do that. But I also want to pop in some really fun colors into the lavender and really put some nice highlights in there. So I'm going to move into my pink family. And again, less is more, so I don't want to necessarily overdo this, but I want to make sure I'm carrying this color throughout the painting so that it's unified. Going a little lighter. Kind of capping off with these little rose end. And now I'm just thinking about some fun colors that I can pop in without overdoing it, just to add some fun little pops of color in there. And I'm wanting to pull a little bit more greenery up in through here. So real quickly, yeah, I've got 5 minutes, so that green is going to help to balance out all those purples and kind of separate that just a little bit better. Hey, Pat. She says, love the colors. Thank you. All right, I think I'm going to pull in some lighter greens now. Just mixing up the right color. We'll test it out and start placing in little bits of separation here. Help break this up. And again, I'm not painting every little sprig. I'm just putting blocks of color because that is what Impressionism is. It leaves the viewer to be able to kind of blend those colors on their own. So if I'm painting everything out, every little detail for you, sometimes that can get a little bit tedious and look a little bit contrived. So just by putting hints of those colors, the eye will do the rest. And a little bit of separation in here with green, I think is needed. So now I'm making sure my brush is really clean because I don't want any of that green to go into my next color. So I'm going to pop in a little bit more lavender highlighting. So I'm going with a much lighter, actually blue now. And I'm going to try this. If I need to add some purple into it, I will, but I think just through here, I think that's probably good. Just looking to see where those highlights are, where I can really punch that color up. Kind of bring that together a little bit. Just wanting to keep it loose. And I want to break this line up a little bit more. And I think one last thing I'm going to do is just start pulling some of these edges together. Back in here where this path is, it needs to be softened. So I'm just using my dry brush to pull those edges and blend those into those other colors. Just push that back a little bit. And then this right here, it almost looked like a mistake, but then I realized, nope, that is supposed to be the tree trunk. So I'm going to emphasize that. So it's just these final details that are important to pay attention to towards the end. Carry that down a little bit. Just put little hints of branches. Break some of this up a little bit. So if you're wanting more detail and you're wanting to learn more about the Impressionistic or alla prima painting method, my online courses, I've got a monthly online course going on right now, Unlocking Color Secrets. And every month we do a different subject. And you can either go pay by the month or you can sign up for a full year and get a discount. But I'm very open with all my colors. I've got a palette, or I've got a camera on my palette. Just gonna come in with some shadowing through here. But I describe all the colors, I tell you all the mixtures, there's close-ups on the brush strokes, so it's very thorough. We have lots of extras each month. There's extra videos on different exercises that you can do. I've got a Facebook group, and I do Facebook Live every month. So anyway, you can find that on my website, chrisbrandley.com, and I've got retreats and workshops and all kinds of fun stuff. So, hey, Becky, thank you so much. She says another beauty. Donnie says thank you, Chris. Beautiful lavender field. Thank you guys for being here. I so appreciate it. Hope y'all have a really great week. I may or may not be here next week. Just check back on my Facebook page. I've got a lot going on this month, so I will try to do another live next week, but I can't promise. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time.